right there for it's $20.
All right, person out there right now saying, how much money am I going to need to start this?
That's the big shocker with a lot of people. It's certainly not like taking up knitting or crocheting where you can go down to the local store and pick up a ball of yarn. Beekeeping there's an initial investment in materials and classes. Generally speaking, when you take your class and buy all the woodenware and bees, you're probably looking anywhere from $700 to $1,000 initial investment. But that's all stuff that generally doesn't go away. It's woodenware that will last a long time if taken care of. And really, the most that you're going to have to replace are the bees if they happen to perish during the wintertime. Once you do the initial investment, the rest of it's a piece of cake, if you will.
When you say initial investment, I mean, there are some startup costs, but how much of this stuff can you actually build on your own?
Well, if you're handy and you have the tools and you have the wood shop to do it, you could build a lot of it rather cheaply. I certainly would like to have the time and the space to build my own equipment. I just don't have it. But even then, it's still not too expensive to purchase it commercially and get it so it's built right. The thing with beekeeping is that there are some high tolerances with the bees inside the hive itself. They like certain spaces and certain measurements, and if you happen to mess that up, you could create a problem on yourself. So.
I'm looking at meadowsweetbees.com right now. And by the way, up on the Facebook, Twitter site, check it out. I just can't believe how much of this that you do on a regular basis is outdoors. I mean, in the wide open spaces. Explain that to me.
Absolutely. Well, beekeeping, bees are wild creatures. They certainly aren't domesticated. We're dealing with a wild creature. We just try to manage them the best that we can. But that's one of the nice things about beekeeping. You're looking at my website there, and you're always outside. And there's some days that are gloomy. I mean, we certainly do not work bees when it's thundering and lightning and pouring down rain or when it's freezing cold. But it's nice when you get out there on those nice warm spring days and the sun's shining and the bees are flying and they're bringing in the pollen and you hear that hum in the bee yard. You could smell the honey in the air. It really gets your blood going.
What do you mean work the bees? What do you mean by that?
Well, when we say work the bees, honeybees require a certain level of management in order to, to create space for them to store honey. You might have an issue with the queen where she's not producing enough eggs, so you want to replace the queen. Or maybe the bees get sick and there's certain diseases and viruses out there that they could have. So you got to go in there and we work them, we manage them. It's kind of tending horses or tending to your sheep. You're just going through, making sure everybody's healthy, everybody's happy, and they're doing what you want them to do.
By the way, we're going to talk about some of the product for the spring, summer, and fall, and the essential aspect of what these bees do as far as what we eat, the amount of crops that they help pollinate. You will not believe that. Doug Oster will get into some of that after the news update at the bottom of the hour. But if someone wants to talk to you directly, and they want to hire you to be a consultant, what you do they call? Do they Facebook? What do they do?
You could Facebook me. You can get a hold of me through Berg Bees. Certainly my website, meadowsweetbees.com. There's a link there on how to contact me via phone or via email. I'd be more than happy to discuss with folks on how to get started with beekeeping. Maybe they have an issue with honeybees moving into the wall of their house and they need them removed. Or maybe they just need a mentor, and we could help them out with that.
1/3 of everything that we eat in this country comes because of the pollination of these wonderful bees that you've fallen in love with. That's staggering.
It is, and I'll tell you what, as from a gardener's perspective, and this is so funny, when Steve and I started working together, I'd always dreamed of having bees. And he's like, well, okay, we'll put a hive in. Well, you can do stories on it, and it'll be good for everybody. And he's like, do you want the honey? I said, no, I'm not interested in the honey. I just want the pollination. Well, the pollination's great, but the honey's even better. The honey is unbelievable. And you've had some, Rob. You know that the difference between real honey and what's sold often as honey is just amazing. But as a gardener, those bees, Steve, I mean, when you have, it used to be everybody would have zucchini, going crazy, but with the decline of the bees, we haven't seen it in the same way where they're not pollinating. Well, now anywhere close to my garden or any honeybee hive, you're getting zucchini, cucumbers, any kind of vine crops. Your flowers are pollinated better. They just do an amazing job at pollinating, and that's what they do. You should never be afraid if you hear someone say that they're going to be putting a beehive somewhere in your neighborhood because you're going to be so happy they did, and get to know them and get the honey.
Yeah, I tell my story all the time. And when I first moved into Pittsburgh, my neighbor a few doors down, I talked to them and said, "Hey, I'm putting honeybees in my yard." And they said, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine." The one neighbor about 3 doors down used to hand pollinate his garden. And about a year, the first summer after I had bees, he stopped and knocked on my door, and he says, "Steve, I got a problem with your bees." And I said, "Oh, what kind of problem?" He says, "I've got too many vegetables." So
That's a good problem to have.
It is a very good problem.
Well, I always tell the story that I saw there was a PBS show about the bees, and they went to China where one of their crops is pears. And and they use pesticides, so many pesticides, they don't have honeybees anymore. Those trees all have to be pollinated by hand, and then each little fruit has to be covered so nothing else gets to the flower. So can you imagine the labor of all these orchards filled with pears where people are individually doing what the bees do? That's why we need honeybees.
Look at almonds in California. Almonds require 100% pollination by honeybees. If we don't have honeybees in the almonds in California, you don't get almonds.
Almonds. Busy as a bee. Now I know where that came from.
And the first time I met Steve, the old Chi-Chi's restaurant on McKnight, and they were tearing it down, and they were smart enough, which I thought was really cool, was that the construction guy was in charge of the demolition. He saw this big honey beehive in there, feral colony. You guessed it, 60,000 bees.
Yeah, it was in an old window.
Yeah, and he said they could have just sprayed it. They could have just tore it down anyway, but they said, well, we better call somebody because we want to save this colony. And so I did a video of Steve taking that colony out of there, and I got to, for the first time, wear all the stuff and be close to be standing a foot away from 60,000 bees all around you. The adrenaline rush, I was hooked. And then at the very end, I got all my stuff off, and I was doing the outro for the video, and I got stung right in the nose.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Wait a minute. 60,000 bees?
60,000.
The question is, how do you remove them? Very carefully. I mean, how do you? What's the process? I mean, here, bee, come here, bee. I mean, how do you do that?
I wish it was that easy. It's actually we'll have to get that link back up on your website, Doug, to show everybody again. But it's a process of step by step taking pieces of the wax comb out, sticking them in boxes, the bees that go with it. Eventually, you find the queen. The folks that are experienced at doing this, like myself, you find the queen. Once you get the queen in there, everything else starts to fall together. We have a specialized shop vac that vacuums up these bees at a very low rate. So you're vacuuming up bees into a separate container. It keeps them alive, and after everything's done and cleaned up, you take them out back to your bee yard, recombine everything, and voila. And that's the simple, in a nutshell, version of it.
It was amazing.
It takes about 3 hours.
It was just amazing to see. A shop vac, getting bees into a shop vac. It was cool.
And they survive.
They do. If
They
you do
thrive.
it right, they thrive. Yeah.
And then the thing about it that Steve was telling me was they want, you want to see a feral colony like that and use that as a basis for other colonies because it has survived on its own. And that one really thrived on its own.
The genetics are fabulous in some of these wild colonies.
Maybe there was some leftover burritos at Chi-Chi's or something.
Could be.
You know what? I was thinking the same line, but I thought, no one's going to get that. All right, but you made it work. Let's take a break. We'll come back, and we'll talk about the product that he has, and it's pretty good stuff, too. That and much more when we get back with Doug and Steve. In just a moment, it's a Sunday morning. Steve Rapaski, Berg Bees, Doug Oster, The Organic Gardeners, Steel City Garden, of course, his book. How's the book doing?
The book is doing wonderful. It was a great release there in November for Christmas. People seem to really like it, which is something you never know when you write a book. And I actually got a lot out of Steve's book, Swarm Essentials. That really helped me a lot. My bees have swarmed every year I've had them, and I felt I was doing something wrong. But after reading Steve's book, I felt so much better about it and saw some things in there that can maybe help me keep those bees in the hive.
By the way, if you have a question for Steve or Doug and you're into the bee thing or you'd like to be, you need to call us right now, 866-391-1020, 866-391-1020.